Val, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm really grateful and honored that we're doing this here today, and I'm excited to dive into you, your story, and your ideas.
Yeah, man. Listen, you had some great guests, so thanks for having me on. You've been doing awesome yourself, so just crushing with this podcast. I feel like you've just been on a uphill right now.
Well, I'm here to discuss you here today. So let's start with a quote, which is from you. When I was 17, I wrote in my high school yearbook, $1 million before I turned 30. You ended up crossing $1 million before you turned 20, and you crossed $100 million shortly after your 30th birthday.
Yeah.
What does that feel like? That's something most people will never understand or get the opportunity to experience. So what does that feel like?
It feels like, is this for real? You know, like you're still a kid and you're just like, so these numbers are just being thrown at you and you got to figure out everything on your own. And at the time I was actually afraid to even share this with anybody. I had no mentors, like there's no Twitter mentors, right? Nobody's writing threads about this stuff. So I had to figure all of it out by myself. You know, there was no YouTube for a lot of it, right? There's nowhere near the knowledge base that was there for me to learn off of. So everything you had to be just figured out yourself. But it was an interesting learning curve because you being like, oh crap, are these numbers for real? Like, is this what am I missing? What am I doing here? Like, you just can't believe it yourself.
Yeah.
So, it was kind of surreal, to be honest with you. You know, and then now I look at it, and when I wrote this, I was like, man, I was pretty bad at setting goals for myself. You know, like why was my goal so low? You know. And like it makes you think like what you're capable of that you don't realize. You know, when I was asked that question, so I graduated high school at 17, so I must have been asked that question somewhere where either was late 16 or just turned 17 or so. And that was the number that just came to me. Is like, all right, that's my goal. But now I think about it, like, why was that goal? Why was that the goal? Why wasn't it higher?
Yeah, it's funny though because a lot of people will set that goal. Oh, I want to be a millionaire by this age. I want to be a billionaire by the time I graduate college, and they never achieve it.
Yeah.
What do you think separated you from those people? We'll get into the meat and potatoes of how you actually did it, but I'm curious from your perspective, why do you think some people set goals that are massive and they achieve them and other people don't?
You know, I think that I'm kind of, it's funny. I just spoke to somebody about that. I'm not going to call myself, I'm kind of lazy, right? But what drove me was just the curiosity to try things all the time. So I think, and when I try something and it just gets me excited, I wanna push it as hard as I can, and like I can't wait to wake up in the morning to check the results, right? And just like doing that over and over again. I'll make myself a list of all the first business that I really scaled in terms of revenue and profits, but not necessarily in people because I was running it myself. I would have, I would make lists of all the advertisers that I just got approved for and I would prioritize who do I want to go live with, right? And I would work till 6 o'clock in the morning and just push. So to answer your question, like what separate, I'm still trying to figure that out. But I think at the end of the day, it's resourcefulness, right? Like I think I have the ability, maybe it's something to do with the fact that I'm an immigrant and I didn't really have much when I grown up. Not that I was poor. I was never like poor, but like still like I lived in a half a bedroom shared with my brother, so we had a desk, we had two desks for us to do homework and a bunk bed in a room size of this studio that we're sitting right here. So like That was the room, that was our bedroom, right? So I think just the ability to do a lot with very little.
Yeah. Where were you in the beginning stages of this journey?
I just got my first computer when we lived in an apartment, in that apartment that I was just talking to you about in Queens, in Rego Park, New York. And I right away I started building stuff. And shortly after, we actually just moved into a house. So, and then I kind of worked out of the basement for a while.
Tell me about the PlayStation video game website that ended up netting you $5,000 a month when you were very young.
Yeah, so we loved video games. Who didn't, right? And my brother was actually kind of good at writing articles. Like he thought he could be a journalist. So I was like, all right, well, you could start writing articles. We would put up cheat codes. Like he did all the content stuff, and I did I built a website. I generated all the revenue. I sold the advertising on it. I ran the entire operation. The only thing I didn't really do is just the content side of it. So he did the content. The website was like about PlayStation. We had reviews, previews, cheat codes, PlayStation wallpapers. Like the site had like maybe 50, I think at that peak I had 20,000 daily uniques.
And how old are you?
16, 17 when we had this website. Yeah.
16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
Making $5,000 a month. That's a crazy amount of money to be making.
So I was making $5,000 a month right before the .com bubble.
So 1999, 2000.
Yeah, like late 98, 99, like something like that.
Okay.
That's around, as soon as the bubble burst, that 5,000 went to 500.
Now, when that happens, are you freaking out inside? Or are you saying, how is this possible? Like, what's your immediate reaction to going from $5,000 a month to $500 a month?
I don't remember freaking out. I don't really freak out by these things. I still don't. My brother calls me a cyborg. Actually, there's a story when he called me a cyborg. He was passed out on a hospital bed, all drugged up. But so I don't really get emotional. I guess that's my the strength that I have is that I don't really get emotional about a lot of things. And I don't remember getting emotional about this. I just figured out that I could sell advertising, and I had an advertiser who would pay me for selling they would sell mod chips. Do you remember those?
No.
So mod chips, so when PlayStation 1, when they start coming out with all these CD-based systems of PlayStation 1, right? So there used to be two, so there used to be the US, and then there used to be like Japan. And I think so it used to be Japan, and I think there was also Europe, right? So if you buy a video game that is made for Japanese market, you cannot play it on your US-based PlayStation. So these guys basically created a mod chip. You could basically solder on this mod chip. You open a PlayStation, you put the chip on, and then it kind of opens up for you to use any. But at the same time, they kind of opened up the ability to bypass copyrights and all this. So people started making copies of them. And I didn't really know, but that's what these guys would sell, and they got very popular. So these mod chip advertisers would just come to me, and I would advertise them on my site. But my site was pretty small. It was like 20,000 uniques, 15,000 uniques a day. So I was like, man, I need sites with 150, 200,000 uniques.
Why were they coming to you?
Because I had a perfect audience. They're trying to sell to PlayStation owners.
Gotcha.
I have a PlayStation website, so I have all this like very targeted traffic. So I said, all right, hey, I got these advertisers like willing to pay me $2,000 a month at that point. If I could get them a website like mine that's 10 times bigger, I could charge them $20,000 a month, and I could keep a piece of that profit. So that's how I started marketing other advertisers, and that was like the only advertiser that I sold that was kind of sketchy a little bit. But right after that, I started advertising half.com, which is later on got bought by eBay. Okay. I don't know if you remember them. You're probably too young for this stuff, but no. They used to sell textbooks, CDs, and DVDs and video games. Those were the four big things they would sell. And I would start promoting that. I was like, oh, pretty cool, like an affiliate program. So I would do the same thing as, again, put this affiliate program on another site, and then like, hey, let me try this thing on search. What if I do it on search? And bam, that just like, at first actually didn't click. I lost $5,000 the first night I did it.
What do you mean by search exactly?
So at the time there was no Google. At the time there was a company called goto.com. Wow. And goto.com was just basically a distribution for search ads. So for example, if you're Yahoo, you would make a partnership with goto.com to put paid ads on top of all the regular organic search results. All right. Later on, Google just like it became one company, and then goto.com actually became Overture, and then got bought out by Yahoo. So Yahoo's paid search were originally goto.com. So that's when I tested that, and at the time there were no budget caps. So I put my credit card in. I put this at night. I worked like through the night to get all the campaign together. I go to sleep. I wake up, and it spent like $5,000 or something like that. I was like, oh. And I generated only like $1,000 in revenue against it. So I lost I think I spent $6,000 and generated $1,000. So I lost like $5,000.
This is for the chips. or for
No, for half.com.
Okay.
So I promoted half.com. So overnight I lost $5,000, which was at the time probably a month or 2 months of my earnings. And I was like, man, there's something, but so that's where the positivity comes in. I didn't look at it as like, oh man, I lost $5,000. I'm never doing this again. I looked at it as, wait, I got $1,000 worth of sales.
Wow.
Right. So I was like, I know there's something there. So I just started tinkering around, like optimizing. And I just broke it down a lot. And I figured out how to then turn it around so that it's profitable.
So in that scenario of you're getting $1,000 back on $5,000 of ad spend, you're losing $4,000. What do you then go in and say to yourself, okay, how can I make this better?
I started breaking it down, like looking at every keyword that I used. I think I like ran a list of keywords, what bids, where some bids did better, like, to drop the keywords that are not working, drop the bids that were on keywords that are not doing very well. Maybe there's some keywords that were profitable. You increase bids on those and get more volume on the profitable keywords. So that's the kind of stuff you just kind of start optimizing. You just break down the entire everything into little pieces.
Yeah. Because it's interesting because there's a lot of people that would happen to. They would lose $4,000 and say, I'm never doing this again.
Yeah.
But something inside of you said, no, this is an opportunity and I can exploit this and I can get better. What do you think is going on there?
I don't know. I somehow got like blessed by like maybe too much positivity because I feel like things are always going to be getting better. Like I could see, okay, things, I see issues, right? I could see issues in the business world and the economy. Like I could see macro and micro. But I guess I tend to see things a little rosier picture, and I could see how kind of the doom and gloom is not always going to win, right? And I just wrote a big thread about how I jack up my ad spend when the recessions hit, because everybody starts cutting. I do the opposite. So as a result, I've actually became more and more successful and wealthier every time there is a recession because I take advantage of it. And I mean, it's like what Warren Buffett says, right? Be greedy when everybody's fearful. Yeah.
So 2000, 2008, and 2022, everyone had their ad spend was lower because of those economic times. And you said, okay, I need to increase my ad spend. What made you, in the initial situation, 2000, right? It's easier to do it in 2008 and 2020 after it's worked a couple of times. But in 2000, you didn't know that increasing your ad spend at that time would yield greater results. So like, what gave you the initial inclination the first time to do it?
So I think that I didn't do it the first time purposely. I did it because I thought, hey, how do I drive more traffic to this advertiser? I tapped out of all the advertising, all the space I have and some of my partner sites have. How do I buy more? How do I get more inventory? So that was really more of a test. And it just happened to be at the time, like hindsight is always 2020, but at the time advertising was super cheap because nobody was buying search advertising. Nobody even knew what the heck it was. So I got lucky in that regard because I was able to take advantage of a mispricing in the marketplace where I was able to buy all these ads at a really, really low cost, and it worked. So if you do that 5 years later, even, it wouldn't work anymore. You wouldn't be able to be profitable. And I was able to make it work with just like standard deals that I had with affiliate programs in the beginning. But by the time as things got more competitive, my deals were getting more better. I was getting more and more premium deals for my advertisers because I was driving so much volume. So if you're a newbie, like you're new and you just heard about search advertising, and I've been already doing it for 4 years, you couldn't compete with me because I'm getting paid double. Like my advertisers are paying me double than what they're paying you. You see, it's like I was already ahead of the curve. So that's so I think the first time I didn't really increase advertising, but I saw it and I took advantage of it, and I just started plowing money at it and advertising as many clients as I could as fast as I could.
So take me through the progression of the journey, right? So the first thing you maybe ever did was PlayStation video game website?
Commercial, yeah. Commercial.
Okay.
I mean, I built some like GeoCity websites or whatever video game sites, but like nothing commercial. Like that was the first commercial
thing you did that gained profit
on the internet. I mean, I've done stuff before that. I used to flip like RAM chips. I would buy them on one auction site and I would sell them on eBay, and like I would do all kinds of things just to do some arbitrage. I was really good at arbitrage my whole life.
So yeah, this is an interesting thing, right? Like some people might listen to this and be like, I've never had any example of me flipping something. And what do you tell that person? Like, is somebody doomed if they're 30 years old and like never flipped anything in their life in terms of like making money? Like, how do you reconcile the fact that you're basically the LeBron James of arbitrage, and now it's almost like we're hearing LeBron James speak about it, but it's like LeBron James could tell me how to play basketball as much as he wants. I'm never gonna be at that level.
Yeah, look, I mean, LeBron James is very unique. I don't think I'm that unique. I think a lot of people, you know, you I'm sure you know a lot of people, maybe yourself, like who would flip baseball cards or basketball cards in junior high school or high school. Like, you know, so if you have that in you, like it's like, hey, I buy this and I sell it for more, and I feel like I want to do it when I was 8 years old, then you just have it in you, right? So it's
but what do you say to the people who don't have it in them?
You got to look for the opportunities. You know, it's hard to what do you tell those people? So, you know, you have to look at everything as an opportunity to try. Because I think a lot of people want to do these things. I think a lot of people do see those opportunities. They get scared. The first thing humans look at is like, hold on, if I thought about it, and then it must not be that easy. So it's like, wait, it can't be that easy. Like, you know, this idea that I have, I'm not gonna try because I think it can't be that easy.
What's an example of that?
Oh man, I don't know. I hear it all the time. Like,
what do people
like?
Come
I mean, a lot of times I'll come up with it's like, hey, I want to do this in my company, right? And you'll have some people around you, just like, well, why would you do that if you know if it was that easy? Why isn't everybody else doing it? You know that question. You heard it all the time. Of course. So I feel like a lot of people don't try to do certain things because they think it's somebody must have thought of this already as well.
And so let's go back to the journey and the story arc. So you did the PlayStation website, and then take me through like the next thing after that, where you said, "Oh wow, like I'm making a lot of money here."
Yeah, so it was the search of super affiliate business, right?
This is taking over the New York Times.
It wasn't just New York Times. I mean, I had 800 different advertisers like New York Times. So I mean, again, somebody told me internally at Google that I was at one point their second biggest advertiser. And so we had, I had advertisers. I mean, I can't even remember all of them. Like I had pretty much every advertiser that you could think of, because everybody at the time, what happened at the time was when the dot-com bubble hit, the economy was also, there was a little bit of a recession. Everybody turned off marketing all of a sudden, right? But what they came across, and it was a kind of like a growing thing, is performance marketing. And advertisers were thinking, wait, performance marketing, I don't lose anything. If I'm New York Times, I know my customer, every customer is worth $1,000 to me, I could pay $200 for a sale and I'll be profitable on every sale, right? So that was a great thing about performance marketing, because of that, because they make a profit on every sale, no matter how many sales they get, there were no caps, right? So like the company that, like I have a pretty big company called Mobile Fuse, right? We have advertisers like Fortune 1000 companies, right? T-Mobile, you name it. Like we have 200 of them. And typically when they give you an IO, or their agency gives you an insertion order, typically it's like, okay, here's a campaign and you got a $500,000 budget to spend, right? There's a cap. With performance marketing, because they're making profits on they don't give you a cap. Like I could drive them 10 sales and for $100 worth, or I could drive. They'll take $2 million worth of sales. They'll take they'll take unlimited volume, which is awesome for me because I was buying so much inventory that I did not want to have any caps. I didn't want anybody to run out of money to pay me.
Yeah. So break down that, like, how did you know that that was an opportunity? Like that the New York Times, how do you stumble across the New York Times is paying for every person that you refer to the New York Times?
So the way it works is a lot of these affiliate programs would be managed by affiliate networks. Okay. So there were a few big ones at the time, and there's still pretty big ones today that would manage a bunch of affiliate programs. So if there was one of the big ones at the time was Commission Junction, and they would have many advertisers, and I would just go through all the list of advertisers they had. And I was like, okay, I think I could advertise this one. So I would just apply to all of them, and I had such a good reputation at one point, like Commission Junction already knew me, so they would actually bring me all the advertisers. And not only that, they will bring me advertisers and say, hey, I got an advertiser who's willing to pay you triple just to put him ahead, like put him on top of your list, right? I'll look at it and I'll take it or I reject it. So they start bringing me all these deals. So the great thing about these networks was that this is the reason I didn't really have to have a finance department, because these networks would collect all the money, and I would just get this one giant wire every month from Commission Junction. I would get another wire from Linkshare was another one. At the time, it was a company called Zoogle, which actually both founders are like my really, really good friends. One of them is like my best friend now. And so there were a few of these networks that had a lot of these advertisers that sourced all these advertisers. I just had to kind of pick and choose, get the best deals on each one, and then just push them and advertise them.
What do you do exactly to be such a great affiliate marketer?
It was largely driven by search marketing. I was utilizing paid search advertising. So I would buy the keywords, all kinds of keywords, and drive traffic to that one advertiser. So for example, if one of my big advertisers was Rhapsody. Rhapsody was owned by Real Networks at the time, and it was the first paid music streaming service, which I loved at the time. It was like, I was like, wow, this is like awesome. Music streaming should be, and at the time this was like the days of Napster, right? Everybody was using Napster. It was like, who the hell is going to pay $10 a month to listen to music?
LimeWire. This is when LimeWire came up, right?
Yeah, LimeWire was like right after Napster. Because Napster got shut down, and LimeWire built like I think it was kind of decentralized. So Napster was centralized. That's why they were able to shut them down. But LimeWire was decentralized, I'm pretty sure, and that's why they were never able to shut down LimeWire. But yeah, so Rhapsody is like, who the heck wants to pay $10 a month?
And Rhapsody is the original Spotify, right? Would you classify like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So exactly. just for people who have never
it's
heard
just
of it.
like Spotify. Yeah. But before
Spotify.
But what really happened was Rhapsody was out there, and then Apple, once Apple launched the iPod, they decided to sell music for 99 cents. So all of a sudden, buying music per song basis became a thing because of Apple. Until the I guess the gravitational force was so strong towards subscriptions, and Spotify came along, that everything went to subscription basis. But it was Rhapsody who really kind of started that whole thing. And they even had these special Rhapsody compatible MP3 players that you could actually listen to music from your subscription. It was like a whole thing. But anyway, so I think I was something like 40% of their new customers new online customers that signed up to Rhapsody were coming from me.
Wow.
Yeah, because I would buy up every keyword for every artist, for every song, for, you can imagine like anything that's music related. I was buying that and driving that traffic to Rhapsody.
And it was profitable?
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Must have been a different time. But okay, so how much does this then lead to the lyric websites?
Oh, I mean that's the thing. Like everything in my life, I just kind of progressed from one thing to another, right? It kind of like, so what happened was actually funny that we just talked about Rhapsody. So that's actually the advertiser that led me into the lyric space. So what started to happen is I noticed that how powerful Google started becoming, and they were kind of like anti-affiliate. You could clearly tell that they wanted to be have relationships directly with the advertisers. So plus I just knew that I was getting at a point where things are getting so much more complicated. Either I do something else, or if I want to go down the path of performance marketing or being a super affiliate, and I essentially need to build an agency.
Okay, wait. So at this time, what year is it, and approximately how much money are you making?
This time, at this point, we're talking about like mid 2000s,
okay,
maybe like 2005 or so. I was making $5-6 million a year. Yeah.
So it's like you're just saying like I'm 40% of all of Rhapsody's affiliate. 40% of people who sign up for Rhapsody are coming because of you, but that is equivalent to you bringing home $5 to $6 million a year.
Oh, again, Rhapsody was just one of 800. So I had New York Times, Rhapsody,
oh my God,
Columbia House, BMG, Vistaprint. I mean, like, man, how many brands? I mean, there were like 800 different brands that I advertised, and I had so many Google accounts because they would have a 25 campaign limit, I think, per account. So I had like all of these Google accounts.
Did you use your brother's Google account? Did you use friends? Like,
no, I had a pretty good structured. No, I had my own ad accounts that I would create. So I mean, things were had to be really, really organized for me to advertise also. So Rhapsody was just one of 800 advertisers.
800.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So then why did you go to the lyrics when it seems like you had 800 different potential avenues to go to next? Why did you choose lyrics?
Yeah, good question. So one of the reasons Rhapsody was one of my bigger advertisers. I don't know, it's probably top 10. And I did have a really good deal with them. So like they were paying me significantly more than anybody else was getting. And I knew music is obviously a huge category. So I started to play around finding other sources of traffic other than Google. Because Google became such a powerhouse. I did not want to rely, I didn't want all of my supply of inventory to come from one place. Like every time Google changes their whatever algorithm or policies, or they would affect me. So, and I was kind of not liking that. And so again, as I was saying, my decision, I either was going to build an agency and I don't have to hire many people to manage all this, or I'm doing something else. So I was like, hey, let me try these raps. I came across these a music website, a lyric website. I was like, hey, I got a Rhapsody. I got the best deal out there. Let me try it. So I put up the ads, and it did all right. And I remember going to the owner and saying, hey, I'll pay you whatever, $3,000 a month or something like that for that space. And it's just gonna say, listen to music, right? Listen to the song. So
that you can get an affiliate commission for driving people.
Yeah, I was probably making, I don't know, maybe I was making $5,000 a month from that. And like on average, I projected I would make $5,000 a month, for $10,000 a month, for whatever it was. And I was, I said, okay, I could pay $3,000 and make the spread, right? And then I also, so I did it a few times. I did it on 2-3 websites, but it wasn't like that strong. It was kind of hard to get those deals because the Rhapsody subscription service wasn't getting a lot of conversions. People were not converting very well. I think it was still days of people were just used to getting free music.
LimeWire too.
Yeah, LimeWire, right? So that was the big one. And so what happened was, it's an interesting thing. At the time, there were a lot of people advertising ringtones, but there were a lot. It was kind of like wild west. I did not do any advertising of ringtones. This is around 2006, 2007. We're talking about 2006, 2007, yeah. And I did not ever market any ringtones. And what happened was there were a lot of players who would advertise ringtones as like, hey, get a free ringtone, but they're not free. So all these, there was a lot of legal problems. So everybody shut off all their advertising for ringtones. All the affiliate networks, They just shut everything off.
Most people don't know how big ringtones were at this time. This is when I got my first cell phone and everyone was getting ringtones, and it was an exciting time. But now people don't use ringtones really all that much.
Yeah, but it was huge.
But it was a huge thing at the time. Yeah. Like for people under the age of 20 or 15 listening to this, it's like when you got a phone call, a song would play often, and that song would be one of your favorite songs. And that was your ringtone. And that's not like a thing anymore.
It's not a thing anymore. It was like a customization now. Right now everybody's on silent.
Yeah.
Right? And who calls anymore anyway?
Right.
But that was like the thing. Like, and that was like a cool thing. And so your phone is ringing with Britney Spears' Toxic or something,
right.
You know? And so it was like you got attention that way too. So it was a customization thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so everybody shut off advertising because there was all these bad players and they were just misleading with the advertising. But I had a really, really good reputation because I was advertising a lot of these like higher like brands and all that. So somebody came to me and said, "Hey, I got this like pocket deal to do ringtones. I still have a budget from this advertiser, but I can't just put it publicly on the network. Can you do it for me? But you got to like make sure that it's like you're up and up on the advertising. I know we trust you. Like try it out, see if you could advertise this thing." So I tried it out and they're like, "Oh shoot, this thing converts pretty well." And I was like, "You know what, let me try this thing on these music sites." And bam, I just saw that the conversion rates and the amount of revenue the same spot was generating versus the Rhapsody, like music streaming, I was generating something like 5 times more revenue.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that a ringtone provider would just do US, because the way it works is you sign up for a subscription for ringtones and it'll get billed to your cell phone bill, right? So these ringtone providers had to have a connectivity into your carrier, whether you're Verizon or T-Mobile or AT&T. And I realized that I was like, wow, they're doing that well. Whereas this lyric site has something like 70% of their traffic is outside of US, so 30% is US, right? And this provider was like, I don't remember exactly the details, but like that provider was only able to support like AT&T and T-Mobile customers, not Verizon.
So it's getting 5 times more profit than the original link, and it's not even fully tapped.
It's not fully tapped.
There's so much more opportunity. You must be going crazy. You must be running circles around your room at this point. Or are you so unemotional, you're just like, this is no big deal. This is just another day in the office.
So at that point, I knew that I got something on my, I had something.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I can't let anybody find out about this. How do I capture this thing before anybody gets a hold of it? So I was like, all right, there are 2 things. I need to optimize this thing. And B, I got to lock in all this supply and like get people locked up before anybody else does. So, and that's why I came up with this thing called Ringtone Matcher. So I basically made like one link that like you click from a lyric site onto Ringtone Matcher. And oh, by the way, to make it, I forgot the third component that I told you, US carriers. And the third component is actually the music catalogs. So that carrier might have like AT&T and T-Mobile, and they only have music from Warner Music. They don't have like from, like there were 4 major music labels at the time.
Wow.
So I was like, man, if I could combine all of that into one giant system that figures out where to send that user to get their ringtone. So if you're a Verizon customer, but you want, but your music is with your artist that you want the ringtone for is part of EMI, which is another major label, right? That I need to send you to a ringtone provider that supports Verizon and has Britney Spears music, because Danny loves Britney Spears.
I love Britney Spears. So toxic.
So that's what Ringtone Matcher did. It was basically like matching each and every click that was coming in to send them off to the right ringtone provider. And eventually it got to a point where I had ringtone providers. I had like over 100. I probably had about 100 ringtone providers covering 60 countries, all major labels. Every carrier was covered. So that was kind of the technology play that put me ahead.
Okay, but how do you end up doing that? Like, was it difficult to convince all the record labels to put their music on your service? Was it difficult to get all the carriers? Was it difficult to go to international? There's so many questions I have here.
I didn't have to do any of that. I just had to convince and get all the ringtone providers, because ringtone providers did all that other work. They put all the music together. They put all the carrier. They connect into the carriers and build the customers. Mm-hmm. But there were 100 different 100 different ringtone providers all around the world. So it was I was trying to get all of those guys on board.
Was that difficult to do?
Yeah, it was difficult. And I did not have I did not have the strength on the advertiser side. I was really good at signing publishers, and I started signing them really fast. I had this 2-page agreement that was really, that's another thing I didn't want to do. I didn't want to put this on a website, and then these owners will think, oh, well, I could just go directly and just cut you out, right? So, well, I realized later they really couldn't, because they didn't have ringtone matcher component, but I didn't want them to kind of cut me out for all the work I did. So I had an agreement that says like, hey, I'm going to pay you, and I'm going to own like ringtone for anything that's related to advertising ringtones and music streaming. I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars, and I own that inventory on your website. But those dollars were so big, like they'll have all these giant banners from Google or whatever, and they'll make like $50,000 a month from those. And then I'll say, hey, I just need that one text link on top, one text link on the bottom. I'll give you $150,000 a month. Like, I mean, numbers were just nuts. So those little text links were generating more money than all these banners and everything.
How much were those generating? The text link at the top and the bottom. And I know exactly what you're talking about. Hopefully, maybe I'll be able to flash it on the screen of the link or the website that you said 500 million people saw it every year?
Every month.
Every month?
Yeah.
500 million people?
Yeah, 500 million people were seeing those ads every month.
I mean, I would look up lyrics back in the day, and I definitely stumbled across this. And
well, it'll be the same thing. Like you see those like cheesy little cell phone icons?
Yeah.
It says like, send this ringtone to your cell phone, or send toxic ringtone to your cell phone.
Yeah.
And it'll be like these cheesy little cell phone icons.
Yeah.
Like I created that. Like
you created that.
Yeah, I created that thing. I even carved out the icon, like, and made the icon like to be the size I needed to be.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Did you ever think about like optimizing that? Because it was just one line at the top and the bottom. Was there any optimization that went into just that one line of like, did you try out other lines?
Yeah.
You tried out like...
Yeah, at first it was static. Like I would literally send the site, here's the icon, here's the text you're going to paste, and here's the link. And you're going to put it this way in this color. Like, and I'll show example how it should look. Eventually, when we build out an ad server, we would actually serve those ads, so we could actually change them on the fly. So it'll say like, send, or like we'll test, like split test all these different variations, all different icons. And eventually, funny enough, around the time I sold the company, we were already transitioning that into promoting music streaming services. And we actually launched like Apple Music, or helped Apple Music launch, because I had like this huge network of music enthusiasts. So it went back to like advertising music streaming. You
saw the full circle of it. Yeah. First it was Rhapsody, then it was...
So it started with music streaming, went into ringtones, and ringtones going down, and music streaming started coming up. Like we went back to music streaming.
What did that whole thing teach you? What was it, a 10-year process? What did that teach you about human nature or business in general? Were there any big takeaways from like seeing the cycle of that?
The takeaway is people will don't know what they want, right? They'll buy what is put in front of them. So again, if people really wanted, what people really should have wanted all along was music streaming, right? But what was disrupted for a while is by the fact that Steve Jobs said, no, I want to sell 99-cent music for 99 cents a song, right? And because they had such a big distribution because of the iPod, that's what people did, because because that's what that was the Apple strategy, is selling 99 cents per song. But what really people gravitated to eventually to was like, hey, I just want to pay a subscription service and get all the music I want. I don't want to have to think about buying each and every song.
Yeah.
So you know, same thing with me. Like, people were landing on all these. It wasn't just lyric sites, by the way. It was heavily lyric sites, but we were also like on other music sites. But people land on these music sites, and we put ringtones in front of them, or we put music streaming in front of them, and they'll sign up for that. Wow. Because it's right in front of them. And it's very contextual, and it's very part of the. It's part of the. It's kind of connected to content, right? It wasn't just like a totally random ad for a Toyota.
So basically, the big takeaway is people will do what's convenient. So like, when you look at that today, like, how do we give people what they're already doing and make it easier for them? Like, what things come to mind for you when you're like thinking about how do you take what people are already doing and make it easier for them to buy something or put it in front of them, like for opportunities today?
Yeah, so like I could take that to my current business, right? Right now, I run a business that integrates into like independent jewelry stores. And one of the things that we do is, we drive customers into these stores. And the way we do it, it makes it much easier for a customer to come across a local jeweler. And we make it very easy for them to, make it very easy for the customer to communicate and come into the store and buy the engagement ring because you're proposing to your girlfriend, or buy a wedding band because you're already engaged and you're gonna have a wedding, or just buy whatever, a pair of earrings. So that's one of the things like what we're trying to we've done also is where you take something that was kind of inconvenient. It's like, who wants to get up and go into a jewelry store? But then like, I could buy it online, but then like, it's jewelry. Do I really want to spend $10,000 on a ring or $5,000 on an engagement ring that I've never seen, right? It's like, it's a very emotional purchase. So you kind of want to make it easier for them to get up and go in, and like, we set up an appointment for them. Like, we do all that on behalf of the stores. And at the same time, the store owners don't have the ability to micromanage that or run that. So that's like an example of making things convenient and bridging the online world to the physical world in this case. Because again, it's all about, like, when it comes to jewelry, selling jewelry, like 90% of jewelry is still being purchased at brick and mortar locations, right? Even after COVID. People want to walk in. So like I saw that as an opportunity, and I said, okay, it's not like, yes, online jewelry is growing, but it's not going to get to the point where people will want to touch and feel the diamonds they're buying, right? So make it easy for them to come in and spend some time with at the store.
When did you decide? I know at some point you took like a 3-year break.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what that was like. And what realizations you had about yourself in the quote unquote retirement?
So yeah, it was a retirement. It wasn't really supposed to be a break. So the ringtone business kind of led me to build another music related company that would sell advertising to brands. So I was a CEO of the Tone Fuse, which is the ringtone business. I was a CEO of Tone Media, which is the media business that would basically aggregate all of the music sites under one umbrella. We were the second largest music property in the country, third largest in the world. There's QQ in China, which is like massive. So we were actually number 2, if you don't count China, in the world. So I was CEO of those 2 companies, and they had like, I own the majority of them, but I had some partners and such. No investors. And around the same time of right after Tone Fuse, but before Tone Media, we launched Mobile Fuse, which me and my partner saw a opportunity of the mobile just taking off. And this is around 2009, literally about 9 months or so after we launched I launched Tone Fuse with and he's like, hey, like, let's look at this thing a little. Let's look at this thing a little further. And like, man, like mobile is just gonna skyrocket, right? Nobody really was focusing on that at the time.
What made you so confident?
So I was CEO of. So I launched the Mobile Fuse.
Yeah.
So I was CEO of 3 companies at once.
Wow.
Believe it or not, it was in your backyard. It was all 3 were headquartered in Manhasset, New York.
Wow.
So, and your question was what made me launch?
No. So, okay. A couple of different questions.
Yeah.
We'll get to both of them. But you saw at one point that mobile was going to explode. What went into the decision to go into mobile? Like, how do you know that mobile was going to be a massive thing?
It just, the numbers were just there. Like we were, when we were serving, when we were running our Tone Fuse ads, the ringtone ads, we were noticing more in like the rise of the mobile devices, just on a big rise. So, and so I just, the numbers were just blatantly there.
Yeah.
And so why not launch a company about that?
So, okay. So this is something really important I want to highlight. A lot of people see an innovation happen that they aren't used to, and they'll get upset at the technology, or they'll get upset at the way the world is headed. Examples of this being, you see TikTok rising up, and you see short form content, vertical content rising up. You see a lot of people getting upset. Like even like Kylie Jenner is posting about, this is, Instagram shouldn't be doing this. Like, what's wrong with them? They're going into Reels, and a lot of businesses are also like, wait, I don't like this trend, and people get upset by what's going to happen. And you, at that time, I'm sure people were being like, mobile phones, like what is mobile? Like, we don't want the world to go to mobile. Like, we're happy with the way it is right now.
Yeah.
What makes you be able to say, okay, this thing is happening that's disrupting me, but I'm going to go with it instead of go against it?
Curiosity. Like mobile's going, like let's just launch a company and deal with it, and we'll figure it out how we're gonna make it work.
Yeah.
But let's just connect the dots. And like I saw some of the dots we could connect already from the start. So, but I knew it was like a totally separate thing, so it didn't make sense for us to have it as part of the original company, and we kind of wanted to focus on that. And my partner, he also had a keen interest in mobile, and had less so, because he saw like I was doing a good job at running the music side of the business. So he didn't really get too involved, but he was really good with like dealing with the advertisers, right? So that's the only thing he dealt with. Like, he didn't really do much more than that, but that's all I really needed him for. So it worked out perfectly. But when the mobile thing came about, we're like, hey, let's launch a company, and so that was, he was more interested in that, and that's why. So kind of back to your original question, how did I get into this whole retirement thing? I ended up at being CEO of 3 companies, right? I sold 2 of the companies, 2 companies I sold. So now that's like, and then a third one I said, you know what, Ken, you're doing such a, like, we both agreed that like, hey man, you're doing such a good job at like, this whole Mobile Fuse thing. And he was really spending more time on it at the time than I was. So it was like, hey, it only makes sense you take over the CEO role. And I went from having 3 CEO titles to 0. And
what year is that?
So I sold the company in 2013, and I stayed on for about a year, even less than that. And so about 2014, at 2014 I had no CEO roles at all.
And then what do you learn about yourself in that time? Going from 2014, maybe to 2015, 2016, you're not quote unquote doing anything, but I'm curious, like, where's your headspace at in that time? And what convinced you that you need to get back in business when I'm sure you had enough money at that time to live how you were living forever, I assume?
Yeah, I didn't really have to work anymore. But I was doing a million different little things.
Like what?
Professionally and not professionally. I was like trying to find a hobby. I didn't know. I was trying to figure out what do I like to do. You know, like I don't have any hobbies because I was like, no, it can't be that like work is my hobby. No, I gotta figure it out. So I started gardening. I had awesome tomato. Like I had an amazing garden. Like it was like ridiculous. Like one day I'll be gardening, the next day I'll be like on a track in my Lamborghini. Like I bought a Lamborghini. I was like, let's hit the tracks. And I just start racing cars. So yeah, I'll be doing something like super subtle, like you know, growing tomatoes and cucumbers and trying to optimize that. And then the next day I'll be on a track like racing, right? So, you know, spending a little more time with my kids. I mean, that was really the main reason. Also, I just had another kid. I had my one of my kids at the time, and I was like, man, I didn't spend enough time with my kids. So that was another reason that I really wanted to kind of spend more time with my family. But that's, you know, just trying to figure out what can I do that's not work. But what was happening is I was like, and it was ending up being on the board of directors of a few company. I was like, I was able to go like network for the first time without like really an agenda, right? I would like meet a lot of cool people. I would just go to like networking events, like I would get invited to places, and I would just chat and meet people, and so. And those things kind of just lead to a little, you know, oh, why don't you should sit on my board. Oh, can you be an advisor? I'll give you some equity. Like, and I get so excited about these things, right? And I would say yes to probably a little too many things. So I ended up being like on a bunch of boards and a bunch of advisory boards. And then even actually in my retirement, ended up accidentally getting into fintech. I don't know how that happened, but I've never spoken on the stage in my life to that point. I don't think I did, at least. And I you know, when I had my exit, I wanted to invest it into. So another thing I didn't mention, I probably mentioned once on Twitter or something, but I was like literally one of the first people to lend in peer-to-peer lending, which is today is called marketplace lending. So I don't know if you've ever heard of peer-to-peer lending.
I've heard of it, but please explain it to me.
So 2006, company called Prosper launched, and they were the first peer-to-peer lenders. So crazy story is Prosper was actually the founder of Prosper was the founder of Ripple Coin.
Oh, wow.
And so the concept was that anybody, like let's say you have $10,000 and like you're just sitting in your bank account, but I need $3,000, and that person needs $2,000, another person needs $2,000, right? What you could do is instead of that money, that $10,000 sitting in your bank, you could lend it to other people and collect interest. And there's a platform in that's set in between. So essentially, it became crowdsourced lending in a way. And that launched February 2006. I believe I made my first loan February 2006.
Really?
I didn't realize it at the time. I was one of the first ones, and I put a bunch of money in. This is 2006, and those loans were like 3 year duration. And ask me questions. I know if it gets a little too.
How did you find out about it?
I don't know. I just came across it somehow. Probably I have no idea. I don't remember how.
Okay.
All I remember is like, oh, it's cool. I could be a bank. So I was like, I threw a couple like $150,000 into, and I lent money to a bunch of like strangers. And there were people like, oh, I need money to go on vacation. I need money to, to buy a server for for a new website I want to build, like whatever, like a million different reasons. And you literally could see the reasonings for him.
Oh, wow.
So I put like $150,000 and I didn't lose it because even though it went the 3-year period went through the Great Recession.
Right.
I was sure I lost it.
Did you forgot about it at some point, right?
I didn't forget about it, but at some point I thought I'm never gonna get that money back. When like 2008 hit, I was like, oh, I'm not. There's no way I'm getting money back. It's unsecured loans.
Right. And then you check it in 2009, and you're like, wait.
Yeah, I checked it at some point, and Prosper kind of started having issues with like SEC, and like they were way ahead of their time. The SEC wasn't ready for this stuff, right?
What's CC?
SEC. So,
SEC.
Yeah, Securities Exchange Commission.
Yes.
And so there was all kinds of like legal problems they were having. And but anyway, I did not lose money. I actually was slightly up. So okay, fast forward how we got to this conversation. Now we're in 2013, 2014. and I had a bunch of money to invest, and I didn't really like the stock market at the time. Or so I was like, oh, peer-to-peer lending worked through Great Recession. There's no way you're losing money on that. So I call up Prosper. I was like, hey, I need to put like tens of millions of dollars.
Wow.
And they're like, I can't take that kind of money. That's like, you're talking about like institutional. I didn't even know what the hell institutional at the time meant. And so it's like, you know what? We have a couple of fund managers that just kind of start working with us. You call them up. So I did my due diligence. I called one of them up. He was running his business for probably about a year at the time. And he had like $8 or $9 million under management. And I really liked the guy. I said, all right, cool. I'll give you my $20 million. But I want to have piece of the business, and I'm going to help you grow it. And this is during my retirement years, so I had the time in my hand. I'm networking, like I'm meeting all these like rich people. I'm like, so like, all right, I'll do this on the side, like a side hustle, right? But it was very interesting for me. I love finance from day one. Like the day I came to this country, I loved finance, right? So he's like, deal. We went in 3 years. It was Prime Meridian Capital Management. His first fund was at $9 million. Fast forward, in 3 years, we took it from $9 million to $300 million. Oh
my God.
Yeah.
9 million being...
I just helped, like, I mean, Don raised money as well, but like...
Who's Don?
No, it was Don raised money, but I came in, I probably, like, never did this in my life, and I probably single-handedly raised $100 million or so. But that kind of created the inertia for for the company to raise money in general. Okay. Because like once you start passing certain thresholds,
more people want in.
Yeah, more people want in. And then we started getting like we had like a South Korean bank that invested into like in our funds. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like we had institutional money managers, we had mutual funds, we had IR like retirement, professional investors.
You were a professional investor when you, unbeknownst to you, when you first approached them.
No, I was not. I learned quick.
Yeah.
So, and I love finance, so I understood the business very quickly, and I knew, and so talking about, so all of a sudden, I went from never being on a stage, like doing all this music stuff, doing all this affiliate stuff, doing search, like all this stuff. I'd never been on stage once. All of a sudden, I'm being asked to be on stage and talk about fintech. Right, so all of a sudden I became like the fintech guy somehow, and that's because for various reasons, but because Prime Meridian was really growing really quickly. I think Prime Meridian made like multiple Inc. 5000 lists. I think once we did a top 500 fastest growing company.
Wow.
So like fintech was on a tear. Marketplace lending, which peer-to-peer lending, people start calling it marketplace lending, was on a tear. Like that just went through a really huge growth cycle. And then I was the only person with 10 years of peer-to-peer lending experience. Right, this is now 2016, so I now had 10 years, and nobody really could say that in the industry. So like the people were asking me to talk about, my 10 years in peer-to-peer lending. So all of a sudden I became like involved in like really in the fintech space. And so all these little things just kept me busy.
Right.
And even though I didn't have a full-time thing to run.
When you said you grew the company from 9 million to 300 million, what exactly did you do in that time?
Raise money.
Gotcha.
I've never raised money in my life either. So at least not for a fund.
Yeah.
I never raised equity for my for the companies that I built. So I bootstrapped all my companies.
Gotcha.
So it was it was very interesting to learn how money works, how people, you would think that like a lot of it is about just pure performance. A lot of it is also like about trust and credibility. Mm. So, they'll do the due diligence. Somebody wants to put $100 million into your fund, they're going to do the due diligence, don't get me wrong. But if they don't feel like the comfort level, with you as a manager or your team, you're not getting that $100 million.
Okay, so this brings me to a topic that's kind of fascinated me over the past week, and that's FTX exploding. You might have some really good insights on this as somebody who's been so close in the financial world for so long. How does something like that happen? And could you explain the situation if are you familiar with it? And like,
yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I don't want to have you talk about something you haven't been.
So my first, I did not have any money in FTX. Or I didn't have any FTX coin. Funny enough, I think I had slight amount of stock in FTX only because I was an investor in BlockFi.
And BlockFi is connected to FTX in some way.
BlockFi went under. And a few months ago, like FTX was buying, like Sam was buying up, like he was like buying up everything, right? Like he was the guy who was going to buy up all the crypto stuff. I think there were even rumors of him trying to buy Robinhood, right? So BlockFi went under, which like I invested in when it was like I think it was like $1 or $2 billion valuation, and it was supposed to have an IPO a year from the time I invested. And all of a sudden it just went to zero, and FTX buys it for nothing, right? And I was like, man, this FTX guy, like this guy is on fire. And I learned a little more about it. Like I was in Bahamas, and I was like, man, like I didn't realize he was all this infrastructure was in Bahamas, and how much money that was bringing in. But yeah, listen, I mean, this thing just everything in crypto just blew up, meaning grew so fast. And I mean, I don't know how he's young. He's in his 20s, right?
I think he's like 30. Sam Bankman-Fried, I believe
he's young. Like, but he built this in his like maybe late 20s. Right. And so just to have that kind of growth and the kind of money involved and so many moving parts, something that's so new and unregulated, you know, you're gonna see that happening. I mean, he wrote this thread, the thread where he says he messed up, and there were two things he said I did wrong. One of the things was like, did I read this correctly? He wrote something along the lines of, I thought I had no leverage. Turns out I had a bunch of leverage.
Yes.
I was like, wait, I must have misunderstood that, right? So that's scary, right? To know that somebody had so much money going through their platform, they were responsible for so much money that, and not to know that you have leverage or a significant amount of leverage that could take you down. So I think that if you think about it, I mean, how many more of those we could potentially are out there that could like blow up? Like we really don't know what's underneath all these companies, especially when it comes to crypto. So, but look, I mean, he's a young guy. He's obviously a very smart guy, but at the same time, he was he was way over his head, and and he was just completely mismanaged this whole thing.
What does that situation teach us about human beings and about the potential and the near-term future?
I mean, it's the same story every time. It's always the FOMO, right? We went through it. I mean, I wasn't alive, but what is it, 150 years ago? Like everybody was investing into railroads. Everybody was like in the whole world. Like everybody was just like, hey, railroads. Like everybody was investing into U.S. railroads. Like from all over the world, people were sending money, to build railroads.
Could you imagine the world of everyone treating railroads the same way we view crypto today?
I mean, it's the same thing.
It's a weird thing to imagine.
Yeah, but it's the same thing. I mean, it was overbuilt, right? There were way too many railroads built, but it was ended up staying around and being the driving force of United States growth, right? An industrial revolution wouldn't happen without railroads. And in fact, I mean, the Civil War probably wouldn't be won by the Union if it wasn't for railroads. That's what it's logistics that won that war, because they were able to move the supplies so much because the North built out all the railroads. I think something like 75 or 80% of the railroads were in the on the north side, right, on the north, and it was logistics that won that war. And but then like industrial revolution was able to happen because of railroads all over again. So so in many ways, same thing. We're going to see the same thing in crypto, right? We're right now we've been building like the whole blockchain infrastructure with that. We don't know exactly where it's going to lead, but we know we're going to be building on top of it. We just don't know how it's going to play out exactly, but we're gonna be building a society on top of this, right? So it might not work out the way that everybody thinks it's going to work out in terms of whether it's going to be millions of different coins or whatever, but the infrastructure is going to be there for sure.
What's your perspective on crypto as a whole?
You talking about crypto or blockchain? Like crypto as a currency or blockchain technology? I think those are two different things.
Break it down for me from your perspective.
So blockchain technology is, is obviously the ledger system that monitors and tracks things on a decentralized network, right? And cryptocurrency is something that lives on that platform. So the cryptocurrency depends on it, but it's not it's not the same thing. So you can move money over that platform, over that network, but you could also move other things that are not necessarily just related to a currency. So that's the difference. So I think the blockchain technology is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And I think there will be cryptocurrency as well. I just don't think we're gonna see so many different flavors of it. I think there's definitely gonna be some winners, and then those are gonna stick around because at this point, it's fairly well absorbed into our society. So I don't think it's really going anywhere. And at some point, it's gonna stabilize. And I mean, nobody knows when that's gonna stabilize exactly either. But I mean, my feeling on it is like I don't think it's going anywhere. But it's now been speculated twice, right? We created two bubbles now, right? It's 2017 and now 2021, right?
And it's interesting because it kind of happened the same way in 2013 as well, where Bitcoin had a huge spike, and then it comes down.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It's 3 times now.
So I'm saying to people, 2025, not financial advice, but like it's the same thing. It just seems like the same parade.
So the last one was interesting though. The last one was kind of it was kind of amplified because of everything that happened with COVID. There was nothing going on with crypto before COVID and before we start printing all the money. So and start trading for fun.
Yeah.
Whether it's stocks or crypto. So I think that this last one was kind of artificial in a way because of all the money being printed, and that bubble was created. And I've always said it, like I always feel that the more money there is in the world, it starts getting kind of these like little bubbles start forming in different areas, and crypto was one of the big bubbles that formed because of that. So when I say bubble, it doesn't mean that it should go back to zero. Bitcoin should go to zero, but we probably shouldn't have been at 62,000 or 69,000, 60,000, whatever it was, right? So, but I think it's here to stay.
Interesting. So going back to your story in particular, you go through the retirement, you plant your garden, you drive your Lamborghini, and then at what point do you realize, oh wow, like I need to get back into this game? Is it when you're working in Prime Meridian? Is it when what happens exactly that spurs you back into action away from quote unquote retirement?
Man, I was just very, I feel like I had to build something. I just had this itch. Like I was just everywhere I look, I was like, man,
the plants weren't enough? No,
the plants weren't enough. There's only so many tomatoes I could grow in Long Island. Yeah, I had to build something, and I just kind of start getting that itch again, and I want to do something. And what I really knew though is I didn't want to build. I feel like I could build another ad tech company or advertising related company in my sleep.
Too easy for you.
I don't know about. Yeah, maybe it's too easy. It's probably easy, but I just wanted to do something different that doesn't just do like I didn't want to do something for corporations. Like I want to switch it up and do something for kind of the mainstream, right? So I knew that what I was looking for is something that's very fragmented and complicated, but not like corporations. So I was looking at all kinds of things like bars, many of them are independently owned, barbershops, independently owned.
Pizza
shops, exactly. Right. So I was looking at stuff like that, and so like for bars, one of the ideas was we were trying to flush out is like I wanted to focus on all the on the beer taps. I wanted to install the beer systems and like own that, because a lot of it came from my understanding of this power of distribution and owning the distribution.
Okay,
right?
So break down to me like how your brain thinks through something. Is it like, all right, like I want to take over something fragmented and I want to like, how does your brain work to get you to beer taps as the thing to take over?
So that actually, funny enough, did come from the music as well.
Wow.
And one of the things that we were, one of the areas we were trying to install our ringtones into were karaoke machines at the bars. And we went to see, there were two companies. There was a duopoly essentially in that space. Fascinating space. I don't know. I think it changed a lot since then. But the karaoke machines were like owned by like two big companies essentially. And we tried like eventually they got like digitalized and there were screens and they're like, oh, let's put a button for ringtones. So when you're at a bar and you're ordering your Britney Spears Toxic, right?
You could just press a button.
You could press a button and then put in your cell phone number and you could get a ringtone subscription right in from that screen. Like we actually had that installed. We actually did it.
Wow, that's genius.
Yeah, so we did it with it didn't work out as well, unfortunately.
It sounds genius.
It sounds genius, but it didn't convert. So, but I learned that that's a big business of just putting karaoke machines in every bar in the country. So that kind of sparked the idea of going after bars. So my idea was like, hey, I'm going to install the beer systems, right? And we'll install those, and we're going to own that, and we're going to deliver all the beer, and we're going to optimize which beer we should deliver, and then I'll be able to optimize the vendors, like all the beer companies, like all these IPAs were coming out, like all these independent beers were coming out, or small batch beers. So I wanted to basically control the beer distribution, right? So that was the thought process. It was like way too complicated, and I was like, all right, that's not gonna work. And but that's the kind of stuff I was looking at. And then I kind of came across jewelry, which I had some experience in. In fact, I was as a teenager, I worked in a jewelry store every weekend. Wow. Since I came to this country when I was 11, up through probably about the age of 17, I worked at a jewelry store. I knew how to fix jewelry. I knew how to I would be like a 14-year-old kid with a blowtorch, and I would resize a gold diamond ring or engagement ring or something. So I learned how to do that. So I sat on a bench, meaning they call it a bench, basically where you do all the jewelry repair work. So I had some experience from that, and I also invested in. I was financing some jewelry related companies, so I kind of got a chance to learn how things work. And I was like, hey, that might be an interesting opportunity, because most of the sales in this country are still. Jewelry sales are done by independent jewelers, family owned, and but they didn't really have the infrastructure or the understanding of how things work. Like just like what you talked about, things changed, whether it's Instagram or TikTok or Facebook. They weren't able to adapt, and that's because they have so many things to deal with to begin with, and they really needed somebody to help them with that.
And you were the person that was able to help with the marketing and help with the distribution for bringing in people from. How do you do it now? You do it through Google, or you do it through?
So currently we focus on strictly social media. That's what we currently, how we drive the customers in. But it's a two-pronged. The business is two parts. On one side we have kind of our data-driven marketing, and we drive people into the stores, and we have like specific infrastructure that's not just for the marketing, but there's like all kinds of stuff that we do around data and being able to have conversations with customers to bring them in. But on the other side, we are a vendor for their inventory as well. So our goal is to be able to bring customers into the door, but also sell our product through those stores. But however, when we market those stores, we actually market everything that's in the store. So we want to like raise all their revenues, but in return, we're like, hey, if we're gonna help you grow the business, I want to be part of the. We want to be your top vendor.
Yeah. And so when you think about like other opportunities for people listening, what comes to mind for things where you could see people making a big impact in a pretty short amount of time?
Like what category, or you're saying
other businesses that somebody could start that might be interesting for somebody looking at arbitrage right now?
Right now, arbitrage is in workforce, right? Labor. The difference right now between the cost of labor abroad versus the cost of labor in highly efficient markets like US, UK, Western Europe it's like night and day, right? So if you are good at something, you could figure out how to add value and organize those teams, offshore teams, and bring those skills into a market like US. And it could be anything. It could be designers or finance or, pretty much any category could be augmented by offshore teams. The thing is, it's very hard for many companies to embrace it or to use it or manage it, and they don't know where to start. Mm-hmm. So if you could be the guy or gal that puts together the team and services and makes it simple, like just breaks it down and makes it an easy service, I think there's a massive opportunity in it's essentially an agency model, but there's a big opportunity in that, just because like so much more work is now okay to be done remotely. Mm-hmm. It became a norm, so that all of a sudden opened up that extra opportunity for to bring in offshore help. And that's not just because it's cheaper, it's just because it's also available. You can't even find a lot of these people to do the work here because it's just not enough. We just don't have enough people for that in US.
Yeah, definitely a huge opportunity there. Now, one question that I like to ask people who have made a lot of money at a young age is like how that impacts society. Like, never before would it have been possible for somebody like Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk to be millionaires, multimillionaires at such a young age in the past. But now there's people like you, and
I feel like grandpa in this. I know.
Yeah,
seeing Mark Zuckerberg come up and some of these guys come up, I felt like grandpa. Like, honestly,
how old are you now?
41.
You're 41.
Yeah.
But like you had $1 million before you were what, 19?
Yeah, something like that.
So it's like that would have been possible even 50 years ago. How does that change society?
I mean, I think opportunities have become democratized. Mm-hmm. A lot more. So because of the internet, I was able to build something out of my basement. Nobody knew who I was. It's funny, like I write some of these threads and you get, you see comments and, it'll be comments like, well, it's because you're a certain gender, certain color in a certain country, with certain parents, certain whatever. Okay. But nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew what I sound like, what I look like. Actually, I'm an immigrant that came with nothing, right? And so, okay, I did have my family, like I did not have like a broken home or anything. So, okay, so that definitely an advantage I probably had. But how about all the other things? Like nobody knew who I was. I did it all from the basement, right? And I was hiding. So I think that we are absolutely in a society where you could be anonymous, but you could get so much information and you could absorb so much information and learn and put it to work instantly. Like I was able to, and this is like, we're 2022. I was able to do that 22 years ago, like in,
2000.
2 decades ago.
Yeah.
And would, even at that time, it was already like, hey, I could put this and this together, put a credit card into, the go-to.com of the day, the search, thing of the day, and connect the dots and make money, right? Like if I was able to do that 2 decades ago, I mean, things are just way easier to do all these things now and test things now. So I think everything has become a lot more accessible for anybody to do, no matter who you are, where you are, like what you are, whatever. Like everybody has access to it realistically.
You mentioned being anonymous, and now you're putting yourself out there with content. Yeah. What went into that decision?
That's funny. So I was always kind of under the radar, but so it actually started out. Funny enough, I had a lunch with Sam Parr and Joe Spicer. Like we had a lunch together, and then like all of a sudden, Joe reaches out and be like, "Hey, I think Sam's just talked about you on the pod." I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, he just told me he spoke about you on the pod. Like, it'll come out tomorrow or something like that." I was like, "What did he talk about?" He didn't tell me, but he's like, "Yeah, I don't know." So Sam just kind of like did a whole segment just talking about me. So that was the first thing that kind of, and then Sam was like, "Hey man, and he always told me like, hey man, you got like a crazy story. If you go on Twitter, like people will love it." I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. I'm not exactly into content and story writing. It's like I'll leave that to you and Gary V.
What time is this right now?
This is last summer. No, not this summer. Summer 2021.
Okay, summer 2021. Gotcha.
Yeah. So and then he kept like telling me, he's like, "Man, you gotta do it. You gotta do it. So I was like, "Ah, fine. Let me put the one story together about the my search affiliate business or whatever." And so I put a thread together. I kind of wrote it up. Sam helped me with it, and just like I just put it up, and I was like, "Man, the thing just got like something, I don't know, 3 million views or whatever." I was like, "Holy cow, this is pretty crazy." And I still didn't know how I felt about like putting myself out there. I've never done that like that, and so I was like, you know what, like, who cares? Let's do it. And I get asked all the time, like, why are you doing it? And I don't really have any. I mean, I don't really have like. I'm just doing it for fun, really. I mean, there's definitely value of. I realized later I get value, just like being able to connect with some cool people, or being able to get through to certain people that I need to get through to, which I would. If I had to, I would use different, connections to do it, but it's so much easier through Twitter sometimes. So it's, and yeah, you get your occasional, hey, can I invest into your real estate thing, or can I invest into Prime Meridian? We do get that as well, but that was never like why I did it. Like, I didn't even talk about Prime Meridian or our fund management business probably for almost a year till into writing on Twitter. So it wasn't like never my intention to get certain financial gains out of Twitter.
Yeah. It's funny because you recently wrote about how attention is one of the greatest arbitrages and assets in today's day and age. And you used the example of Mr. Beast to show exactly what you meant. It's like, when did you realize that attention for your personal self was such an asset?
I always actually prioritized and valued credibility over attention for majority of my career, and I still do to this day. Like if I had to choose one right now, if I could only have credibility or if I could only have attention, I will take credibility all day long. Right?
Because you can have attention for the wrong thing, which
like
could give you no credibility. It's like if you do a bunch of pranks, right?
Yeah.
And then you get a bunch of attention for doing the pranks. That's way different than somebody who gets attention for building companies, which will give them credibility.
Yeah, exactly. So I always focused on the credibility side of things. So that's I mean, I don't know. It's what was the question exactly again?
When did you know that when did you realize that attention for your personal self was something beneficial?
Very valuable. Well, I mean, I always knew it, right?
Yeah.
I just never experienced it until I kind of started putting myself out there and writing my, stories about kind of how I build different businesses or my views of things, and kind of like some of the stuff I try to put out there, kind of like to mentor or just putting valuable knowledge out into the universe, right? So then I started realizing, and again, I have like barely any attention, to be frank. Like, just grand scheme of things is pretty small. But I do see how people perceive you differently. So like if I want to reach out to somebody and I have certain access to attention and credibility, the response rate is different, and the type of response you get is also different from people, as opposed to if you didn't have. Like I could be, before Sam put me out there and I started running all these, getting followers on Twitter, I was the same guy. I was like, I was just as successful, but I had, 100 followers because I never did anything on it. So it doesn't mean I was any less successful, any less credible, but nobody nobody knows about it. It's, if you want to reach out to somebody and, because you have a question or you think there's a relationship or you want to put somebody in touch, it's just different. You get you get different response.
Yeah. Is there any stories in particular that stand out that you could share about how the attention has helped you or benefited you in a way you didn't expect?
Yeah, so like we were setting up TikTok, and I actually put out on Twitter, I was like, hey, I need help with TikTok. And somebody actually literally like who works at TikTok reached out to me and helped me with like setting something up, because I was basically trying to start spending money on TikTok. And one of the guys was like, man, I love your content. I'll help you out. And he put me in touch with the right people in the company. And like I was up and running in like no time on TikTok, thanks to Twitter.
Yeah.
Same thing. I had some issues with Facebook, and I put it out there, and I'm not going to mention the name, but a guy who was like very successful guy actually, like reached out. I was like, man, I'll connect you with some people. And, we were able to solve a lot of issues that I was having at the time.
Wow.
Because of that. So that it's definitely gives you ability to get access to people that you a lot more efficiently. I probably could get access to those people. It'll probably just take me longer time. And I would have to probably go through certain pays. Like, hey, let me see who's connected to. Like, it'll take more time as opposed to like, hey, I could put it on Twitter. It's like, hey, I need help with this.
It's immediate.
And bam, like I get, a bunch of people DMing you and offering you help with stuff. So it's just very interesting community. I did not know how that community works until I started getting into the weeds.
And were you on BBC Radio as well?
Yeah, that was funny. The funny part about that is I don't even wake up early. Like I go to sleep super late. I go to sleep like at 5 o'clock in the morning generally. And I wake up like 11, 12. So I get my 6-7 hours of sleep, so I don't wake up that early. That day, for some reason, I just woke up early. I just put up a thread about don't give your kids allowance, pay them interest instead thread. And that kind of went viral. And I wake up at 9 in the morning. I'm looking at my phone. It's like BBC DMs me. He's like, hey, can you be on our like national radio today talking about like this whole concept? I was like I didn't say today. He said, can you be on at 5 o'clock our time, which is their rush hour time, 5 o'clock our time. Can you be on? And I'm like, I didn't know he meant today. Because that's like 11 o'clock in the morning here, I think. And I was like, yeah, sure. When do you want to do it? He's like, oh, today. I was like, oh, okay.
Let me clear my schedule for the BBC.
Yeah, I mean, so I was like, all right, cool. Otherwise, I would have probably just missed that message, and it probably would have been too late. By the time I wake up, it'll be too late. But yeah, so I was on BBC Radio. like asking him was like, hey, does the American accent easy to understand? Because I know, when Brits talk fast, like it's hard for us to understand sometimes. Yeah. All right. Especially depending on which not dialect, but like which accent they have. Because like all UKs has different accents. Mm-hmm. He's like, no. He goes to me, we love American accent for radio. We always say that the American accent is like made for radio. I was like, cool. Okay. I'll just, I'll be myself.
That's great. Yeah. So it's like, you never know what's going to happen when you put out a thread and when you put out tweets and when you put out content in general. It's like, it could be seen by the craziest of people.
Yeah. You got like really cool people reaching out and just saying what's up all the time.
You've said before in an interview that you feel like you're one step away from losing it all.
Yeah.
Do you still feel like that?
Yeah.
To this day? Why? Or what's going on there?
Well, Sam Bankman is a perfect example of that. Right, FTX. No, I'm way more diversified than that. But I don't know. I think it's the immigrant mentality. You always feel like you're gonna make a mistake, and you want to be as aggressive as you can be, to grow as fast as you can, right? Because you're competitive. I'm competitive. So you're always worried about like, hey, am I gonna push it a little too hard at one time and to lose it all, right? Like, because a lot of these things could be like a domino effect, right? And I have the responsibility of supporting multiple businesses. Like, there's Mobile Fuse and there's Jocalio and there's like, it's like I have all these companies that rely. I mean, they're self-sufficient in many regards, but when there's a shockwave like we had with COVID, before we knew about PPP and all that good stuff, it's like I gotta support that. I can't so you gotta be there and support those businesses when they're not doing something happens, right? It's all nice and rosy when everybody's printing money, but when it's the bad times is when a lot of businesses go out of business because they just don't have the cash to stay alive. And most businesses actually fail, not because they're not unprofitable, but because they run out of money. And it's actually even more true in like real estate. That's why you see a lot of like great projects get started and they just never get finished because they miscalculated how much money they need, and then now they can't even get the money because there's all this domino effect. Like a lot of real estate developers kind of go out of business for that reason, and you just have to have think ahead and make sure you have liquidity. So a lot of times you could also have the money and have the balance sheet, but it's not liquid, right? It means nothing if you have all this money, but it's all tied up in something that you can't get it out, because this business needs the money right now. It doesn't care that you're worth all this money, but you can't supply the actual cash to that business. It's going to fail. So you got to be careful. So I do have like a principle, like a liquidity principle that I always operate on, because I think that's one of the most important things is just managing your liquidity.
When you say liquidity principle that you always operate in, what is that?
So I have like buckets of liquidity that I always have. Like I have things that are investments that are not liquid or not like it'll take a while to get liquidity from. Like for example, your private businesses, right? Then I have medium term liquidity. So something that I have an investment in, but I could get money out of it, but it'll take a few months. So maybe 6 months, 9 months, 3 months, 2 months, but it's not instant. And then you have like instant liquidity, right? Like your margin account from your stock, more like under your stock on stocks or something you could get instant cash. So whenever I have an opportunity to invest into something or buy a piece of property or buy a piece of land, or this business needs an infusion of cash, I have access to instant cash to put in. Even though I always have zero cash in the bank, I don't ever have cash because I have access to cash, and I think that's what makes a lot of the most efficient investors. They don't typically have a lot of cash. That said, there are times where I see things are getting too frothy.
Yeah.
Funny enough, I was building up cash. January and February of 2020, I was selling. I stopped. I finished selling in February 18th was the last stock like sale I did. And then of course COVID hit, and I just like I went all in.
Why do you sell in January and February of 2020?
I just felt like the market was a little frothy, and I just wanted to take some off the table. I couldn't sell a lot because like you got to pay taxes and all that, so there's only so much you could sell. But I you sell and you raise a little bit of cash when things are really really good, so that you have ammunition. You want to have gunpowder when markets create an opportunity. You want to be able to take advantage of the opportunity.
A lot of people suggest that we're in a recession or 100% headed towards a recession in the next year.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean for the average person right now?
I mean, look, I think the challenge right now is that, first of all, I do think that we're going to be in a recession. I actually don't think it's going to be a deep one. I don't think it's going to be like a really scary one. I think actually our government is doing a pretty good job. The Federal Reserve, I should say, is doing a really good job at getting ahead of it, and they've done it before. So actually, if you look at Europe always, for example, struggled with having like no inflation. There's some countries over there like Germany, I believe, and some other countries had like negative interest rates in the past, like before COVID. Right, they didn't know how to get out of it. Everything they would do, like just trying to stimulate the economy, just wasn't working. It was very, very like dead. In US was kind of close to that too. Like we've had very low rates for many, many years, and but we were always like ahead of it. Like so now them trying to get out of this inflation and raising the rates. I think that they're doing the right thing. I do think they're gonna like overshoot, and I think they know they're gonna overshoot, but they kind of have to do it. So I think we're gonna have like a soft landing. It will be a recession. I mean, we'll probably are in a recession already. Just technically, it's not a recession because the way recessions are calculated. But we'll definitely gonna have a recession. I just don't think it's gonna be a deep one. What it means for people is you just gotta be careful, like with your finances. Look for opportunities if you do have cash, or opportunity to invest into things. Obviously, everything went up in prices, but also kind of. I mean, I think some salaries are probably didn't go up as much, although some people benefited a lot more than others, especially if you know some industries where you were really able to take advantage of the salaries, like tech. I mean, I think tech was like another beneficiary, especially with all the flexibility that, a lot of us got, like working from home and all that. But yeah, I think that's gonna be a tough part, right? Because like prices and this inflation is getting harder to afford things, and just afford the cost of living is high. But on average, the salaries didn't really keep up with it. So I think that you got to be just, that means you have to be careful. But for a lot of other people who have been able to save up from all this monetary stimulus that we got, and if you didn't spend it all, if they didn't waste it all, you should be able to look for opportunities right now into, whether you're starting your own business or investing into something.
Where do you think what are the mistakes that people are going to make in the next year or 2 years?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think a lot of the mistakes were already made over the last year or two. You see how much money there was, again, like all the stimulus and all the money that was printed and all the money that was given out. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people spent it on discretionary things that they didn't need to spend it on, right? So, funny thing is, the jewelry industry, for example, had one of the record years last year, 2021. Wow. Yeah, because people couldn't travel, but they had all this money, so they're just like, hey, let's just spend it anyway. So, I unfortunately, I do think the population spent way too freely on Rolexes and overpaying for cars just because they need to have that car right now, and like they don't want to wait, right? And they'll overpay, and like that kind of created some inflation in the used car market and new car market, and for luxuries. So everything just got kind of driven up for that reason. So I think that a lot of the mistakes were already made. I don't know what mistakes people will make in the next year or two. It's hard to tell, right now. But I think I think a lot of people made mistakes of not investing into the future, but just but buying things that are like depreciating in value, essentially.
Makes sense. And I like to end these podcasts with a challenge for people.
Yeah.
A challenge. It could be something about money. It could be something just for life in general. But when we listen to this podcast in general, we tend to have consumption. And I like to end with leading people towards some action of some sort. So what comes to mind for a challenge?
Oh, man. The challenge is like learn something new. I think so many people right now are still working from home or have flexibility to work from home or some kind of hybrid. Like you have so much more time, that you no longer have to spend on like commute 2 hours a day, right? Potentially. Spend that 2 hours on learning something new, a new skill, get certified in something, get a real estate license, like anything, just like learn something new that's interesting for you so that you could have a new idea or new opportunity or new side hustle, right? That is not just part of your part of your like regular job.
Yeah.
So I think, and there's so much being taught online all the time, and I still don't think that people are taking full advantage of it. So I mean, my challenge would be like learn something new.
I think that your skill, like you said before, is in your resourcefulness, but it's also in your curiosity and your ability to learn. And you've constantly been open towards all the different ways in which the world has changed. Do you have any tips for learning specifically that have helped you become a better learner, become more curious? When you set aside and do a new project or a new social media platform or finance, like you're learning something new.
Yeah.
How do you go about learning most effectively?
Just do it. Like, don't overthink it. Like literally just like you see something, don't try to perfect it. Just put the minimum thing you could do together. And even if it sucks what you're putting out there, if you put it out there and it gets even the 1/10 of the performance that you needed to generate, you got to say, okay, hold on. If I barely put any work into this and it was barely a product, it was barely anything, it really should be completely been rejected by, whatever the customers, or just like if it's an ad, and it worked. Imagine, like you have to imagine, like, man, imagine what that would do if I actually put time into it and optimize it and spent, resources on it. What happens is a lot of people are afraid to put something out that's not perfect, and they're afraid of failure. So they don't ever get about launching it, or they spend too much time or too much money or too much resources to put it together. And a lot of times what I see is they actually do all that, like they spend the time, the money, and then never launch it anyway because they just feel like it's not good enough, or they just kind of lose their interest in it. And when you're spending the time and the money and you're not launching it, you're also not learning.
Yeah, I'm so happy you mentioned it like that, because the learning aspect of it is to you equivalent to launching and getting something out there, which I don't think most people think of learning and putting something out there in the same breath, but it really is. You can't really learn something fully unless you take what you've learned and done something with it.
Yeah, it's like Tyson says, right? Everybody got plans until they get punched in the face, yes. Right? So it's the same thing. Like you could make that perfect product for the next year. When you put it out, I guarantee you the feedback is going to be very different from you expected. You could have known that if you would have launched 11 months ago.
I love it. So let the takeaway be launch something, learn something, launch something. Thank you so much, Val, for taking the time today. You have so much experience, this podcast has had so many stories, so many lessons, so many learnings, and I'm really grateful.
We kind of went all over the place, but
that's the way it's supposed to be. So thank you so much. And where can we send people to connect with you further?
Thanks, man. I'm on Twitter That's pretty much that's the main game right now.
Okay. Twitter linked below. Thank you so much, Val.
All right, dude. Thanks, man.
Crushed it.